I'm Ben Sparrow, and my presentation is called Environmental Scientists versus Journalists, Writing for Peers and the Public. So in my section of Lang 120, we were tasked with comparing two different genres concerning a topic of concern in our field of study, mine being environmental science. And so I compared two different articles. The first was published in Elsevier, which is one of the world's leading scientific information providers. And it was an article co-authored by 3 environmental scientists discussing permafrost melting in Alaska. And then the New York Times article written by a single journalist, which covers the same information, although is directed to the public. And it cites the Elsevier article as data. Okay, and in my analysis, I wanted to grapple with the question of what are the most effective factors in both genres' ability to persuade and inform, which I saw as a scientific author's main purpose in writing. And so before I get into my findings, I want to address a different perspective. In 2011, Teresa Tani published a paper where she conducted a similar study, and she found 6 universal moves or rules, essentially, that are applicable across writing. And in my study, I found that they were present, although they weren't prevalent, and I found different things that were much more effective in persuading and informing an audience. And my first one is the audience. Who you are informing and persuading will heavily change how you do it. So in the research article, it is written by and for environmental scientists. And as a result of that, you need an understanding of climate change and environmental science and research methodology in order to fully comprehend the piece. While in the newspaper article, it's written for a general public, so none of that knowledge is necessary, and it's hopefully assured comprehension for everyone. And next is style. In the research article, it is written in the APA format, which is prefaced by an abstract and follows the form of intro to methods to intro, research methods, discussion, conclusion. And from that, that does not allow the input of opinion, which is crucial to preserving the legitimacy of scientific work. And that it contrasts to the newspaper article, which subtly mimics this form, although is supplemented by what I call fluff, which is things such as defining terminology, explaining concepts, connecting dots a lot of ways, so like general public doesn't have that knowledge. And it's also full of pictures, which helps people's comprehension because they don't understand this stuff. And next is purpose. While the two genres do share the purpose of explaining, informing more people of a specific problem with climate change, the way they do it is differently. So in the case of the newspaper article, it is essentially just trying to inform you enough to where you are persuaded to care about the problem of climate change being real and that it's actually harming the earth. While that is assumed knowledge for any scientist that will be reading the research paper, so it doesn't really get into that. It's mostly just about connecting the dots and proving that your data that you are representing is factual and thus relevant in the scientific community. And next is evidence. The evidence used to support the different findings are very different. And in the case of the newspaper, the evidence is the research article. You're going to trust a scientist, someone who's more informed than you, and they're giving you data. You're just going to believe it 9 times out of 10, especially if it's published by the New York Times. So from that, the way that the research article, though, proves itself is in methodology. A scientist is not going to just trust any data you give them. They want to know how you compiled that data and using what methods. And from that, they can conclude that it is relevant in the scientific community. And what this means for us is that all those aforementioned facts or parts of factors, are all part of rhetoric. And the definition of rhetoric I use is the conscious use of language done by Victor Villanueva. He said that. And from that, if you understand someone else's conscious choices to persuade and inform an audience, you can replicate that yourself. So we should be taught to ask the questions. Who are you talking to? Why are you talking to them? What are you telling them? And how do you support it? And so what? Everything, all those are what we should base a class like Lang 120 around, which is giving us the skills that can be transferable to all of our different disciplines, because not all of you are environmental science majors. So with that, thanks.